Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Hello to all of our folks on the West Coast as well. My name is AJ Kuftik. I'm a digital product strategist with Expedient. Today, we have an awesome conversation with Unlimited Systems. Ben Schmitz and Shawn Burgess from Unlimited Systems. Hi, Ben and Shawn. How are you today?
Great. How are you, AJ?
Great. Hey, real quick housekeeping note, though. This is a Q&A from me and Unlimited Systems, but if you have questions, please enter those about here into the Q&A panel. That helps us keep track of the questions and make sure they get answered. If you ask a question, you're entered to win a prize. That prize this week is a $100 Amazon gift card. And all of this is being recorded. So if you miss something, you step away, or you think that Ben and Shawn have said something really neat that you want to show your boss or your coworkers, which you probably will. That will be on our website at go.expedient.com/webinar replays, youtube.com/expedient, instagram.com/_expedient, and linkedin.com/expedient. Hey, everybody on LinkedIn, I hope you're having a great day too. So Shawn and Ben, welcome. Can you guys introduce yourselves in kind of what Unlimited Systems does? Because I think this is you guys have a really interesting company behind you.
Sure thing. Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Schmitz. I'm the Engineered Solutions Manager at Unlimited Systems, which is a division within the business development team. I focus on more of the complex technical sales opportunities for both new and existing customers. And a little bit about Unlimited. We started our company in 2003. And at the time, we were a reseller of a practice management software platform that was really what we would consider sort of vanilla, meaning that this practice management system was really able to be used in really every kind of division of healthcare. But our primary focus was actually selling to oncology practices. And as we did that, we understood that there were some deficits because of the inherent complexity of oncology. There are many things that kind of separate that specialty from something like, say, orthopedics. So, systems are designed specifically around addressing those complexities. And as we grew our customer base, we noticed that there were some deficits in this kind of vanilla practice management system. And we created subsequently what we call our product G4 Studio, which is this kind of oncology specific expansion to that practice management system. And we've since grown our customer base where, across the US, we have more than 50% market share of community oncology practices. So, small company, about 150 employees based out of Cincinnati, Ohio, but with a quite large footprint in the kind of niche space that oncology is. I'll hand it off to Shawn for him to do his intro.
Yeah. So I'm Shawn Burgess. I'm the Director of Systems Engineering here at Unlimited Systems. I oversee two teams that are responsible for the technical support of our application suite and our technology infrastructure, which supports both our internal resources and our hosted environment, which is accessed by thousands of external users on a daily basis to run their practices.
So when you guys kind of had a fairly interesting event that kind of kicked this all off. So what was your primary goal with Expedient, and what was that event that really kicked this all off?
Yeah, so what really started this was we did have an issue back in May of 2019. Turned out to be a hardware issue. We didn't, of course, know it at the time, but it did cause our hosted environment to run slower to the point where it was impacting our clients. And we have very little tolerance here when it comes to any sort of impact on our clients. We want to give them the best experience all the time. It was a vague issue, and one of those cases where everyone's, what's the status? When's it going to be better? And looking at it, it really gave us the opportunity to dig deeper into our environment and take a look at where do we have room for improvement. In this case, it was a storage array, and we did get, service fully restored by the end of the day, but it was one of those, how can we handle this better next time? How can we really reduce that impact to the client and make it almost push button to get resolution and to restore services?
Ben, do you have anything you want to add on that, or did Shawn pretty much cover it there?
No, I think he covered it pretty well. Just to paint a bit more of a picture, there are two different kind of deployment models I'm sure everybody watching is quite familiar with. You've got your on-premise deployment where customers are responsible for kind of maintaining their own infrastructure for hosting that software. And then we have a hosted option, which was released to market in 2011, I believe. And I think it is important to note that, while the issue was, the outcome was quite insignificant in terms of impact to customer, it really kind of shined the spotlight on the realization that, as technology evolves, as do kind of the expectations and the intolerance for kind of blips in the system, if you will. So, it's one of those deals where you don't just spin up a hosted environment. It's a continuous evolution to make sure that you continue to grow that kind of integrity of the environment. And this was really, it just served as a great kind of opportunity for us to really identify that before it became, a larger issue. And that's where we subsequently got into, spoiler alert, working with Expedient.
So when you guys started talking with Expedient, what was that goal of coming on board? Like, what were you looking to gain? Because you said that this was, you kind of said, we want to respond to this in a different way. So what was the goal of responding to it in a different way? Just increasing your resources or DR plans? What was the kind of goal there?
Yeah, so, we had very vague but ambitious goals of having a fully built out disaster recovery environment, very robust data backups, really taking it to that next level. But that's really all we had to go for. I kind of think about that as, riding in your car that's starting to, get some age on it, and you realize that you need a new car, but what kind of car do you need? What are the capabilities of it? So we actually hosted an offsite summit with the leadership team at Unlimited. And we started asking ourselves, really, what is it that we're trying to accomplish here before we go to the dealership and, pick out, a Chevy Equinox or whatever the case may be.
Before you start worrying about colors, what do we want this car to be?
Exactly. So we started really whiteboarding, what is considered unforgivable and what's considered forgivable in terms of latency, downtime, things like that. And as AJ had made the point, prior to joining this webinar, there's really no acceptance for issues, right? If you go in and you want to watch Netflix at night, and if you can't get into Netflix, that's unacceptable, right? But I'm going to forgive them. I'm not going to cancel my Netflix membership. So really trying to figure out what is the kind of margin of error there, and what is really going to be the requirements to make sure that we meet those requirements. So we really kind of asked ourselves, in terms of worst case scenario, data loss, what's forgivable and what's unforgivable. As I'm sure many of you will agree, probably all of you, no data loss is really forgivable. So we knew that we really wanted to have a solid data backup process at the core. That was kind of first step. So making sure that we have, at this point now, tertiary data backup. So, offsite backups in multiple locations. So, if doomsday ever happened, fill in the blank, whatever that might be, in the worst case scenario, we will have that customer's data backed up with the least amount of downtime as possible, or data loss as possible. The other was, what if this environment does go down? So, to that comparison earlier, what if Netflix goes down? Like, how long can Netflix be down before I, as a customer, say, you know what, I'm actually going to retire from Netflix and go to Hulu or something along those lines. That same question was asked for our space, and we really understood that with a system that's as integral to oncology practices as ours, there was really no margin for error there. That environment had to be up. So in the worst case scenario, all we can really afford is a couple few hours for us to be able to get that environment blooming back up in a secondary data center. We don't have the time to restore from cold storage backups and try to procure all of the equipment necessary. So we have to have all of that ready to go, kind of a pilot light, if you will, that in the event that it's needed, we can kind of turn the knob and that just, blooms up into a fully replicated environment. So those are the kind of questions that we asked ourselves prior to going to the dealership, back to that analogy. And, from that point, we started looking at, self-serve options of standing up our own colo environment, looked into various vendors. We also looked into kind of a true cloud hosted environment such as AWS or Microsoft Azure. But this platform was really architected on a SQL database structure. It was really designed to be hosted on servers, and there were a lot of variables involved with going into like an AWS or Azure environment. But we wanted to get as close to kind of the benefits of a true cloud environment as possible. And through many vendor explorations, we came across Expedient and worked with those folks, and it just from the start was a very great experience.
And I think, there's this piece of, disaster recovery is in best cases, a replica of your production environment. And, you guys are a growing practice. So how did that play into how you're looking at handling resiliency from a failure? Because you want to add resources, but then you kind of have to juggle them. I think, Shawn, we had talked in a pre-call about, how do we handle these two things? How do you handle your resources going forward along with disaster recovery and resiliency?
Yeah, and that's always been one of the challenges, especially here. I mean, with growth, it's always that constant balancing act. You don't want to overinvest in hardware and just have it sit idle. At the same time, we wanted to be nimble enough to accommodate the sudden surges. If we brought on another client, or if a client, they acquired another practice and they grew, we had to be able to adjust quickly. So it was that balancing act. And as you know, growth isn't just really a single item. It's multiple things also on the back end. For example, last thing I believe we added was about 20 terabytes worth of storage. And when we were doing that, we were looking, hey, we're going to be confined in rack space. We're being limited in network ports. We had to start examining all these other things to go along with it, along with the disaster recovery site, making sure we had enough storage there and that we could, replicate all the data and have enough backups. So it was really a challenge going forward, and something we were hoping to address with this next kind of version of our environment.
I think that's kind of the key, is that DR isn't just the other place. DR involves everything on the front end too, because if you're adding a bunch of storage and you're adding a bunch of growth, you got to grow DR too. So it's almost like it's a holistic part of, do I have enough to be able to grow holistically and not just grow in little bits and pieces? So you talked about the options for handling that growth. Was there a specific, you talked about looking at an AWS and an Azure, sort of, where did that kind of fall down? Was it just the fact that it was a very different world than what you were dealing with, and that, from a technology standpoint, it wasn't really lining up?
Well, I can let Ben, address some of this as well. I know from my side, I know we were really looking for a vendor who'd done this and could prove this, not just, give us a server to access it, but also with the disaster recovery options, the replication options. I mean, Expedient was more experienced in that realm. It really gave us more of that confidence walking into it, that we wouldn't have to build all the replications and everything on the back end. You all had that experience already. It could help us leverage it and develop the best practices. And then Ben, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think we also kind of took a step back as an organization and really realized what our primary focus was, like what our strengths and weaknesses were. And, we're not an infrastructure company. We're a software company. And, the infrastructure team, while they did a fantastic job and continue to do so, we understood that for us to do our jobs and do it well, you have to be kind of an inch wide and a mile deep rather than the latter. And that's kind of the methodology that we operate as an organization across the board. And it was borderline of too tall of an order to ask for an infrastructure team to both specialize in maintaining the virtual side of that environment, the hosted environment, as well as the physical side. And it really came down to kind of a fork in the road. Do we want to invest in actual FTE employees to manage that infrastructure, or do we want to basically partner with an organization such as Expedient, who can really take care of that? They are the experts. They're the inch wide, mile deep in infrastructure. And it was just kind of the perfect marriage that really was conducive to the goals that we were after.
And I think that's kind of the key point. This is the value proposition that I've talked about a lot on these various webinars. But I think the big piece is, this is the sort of stuff that when you actually think about it, this isn't what most companies do, right? We've had this discussion with a number of, our customers, and internally it's that we do what most customers don't specialize in. It is our job to specialize in it, right? I think a lot of people are capable of doing it. I think it's perfectly fine if people want to do it. But I think you have to consider, what is that value that you're actually getting back? And for Unlimited Systems, it was a lot of effort that didn't seem to turn into a huge amount of value to the business, whereas we need to be able to grow our platform to meet the needs of our very critical customers. You're talking about oncology, which is a field that I would like to, no knock on Unlimited Systems, but I would prefer that the field of oncology stop growing, right?
That's the goal.
And it's right. That's the goal. And so this ability to grow your resources on demand to meet the needs of your customers, I think, is a really, really powerful thing. So what has that actually done for your operations? You mentioned you have an infrastructure team that does a fantastic job. Kind of what are they doing now that, Expedient is handling that infrastructure for them? What have they been able to pivot into?
Yeah, and really, going to Expedient has really streamlined some of our processes. So we spend a lot less time, like you mentioned, updating firmware and BIOS, and replacing outdated servers. So meanwhile, the company still kept growing. I mean, we've already gone back to Expedient a few times and expanded the resources we use there, because we're still growing. And it's allowed the infrastructure team to really stay that same size and accommodate this growth without having to constantly add more staffing to keep up with it. And I think that's been one of the bigger benefits. And it's allowed us to do some things more thoroughly, more frequently, and gives us more confidence. And we can do that DR testing literally with the push of a button, where we're running in a different data center on our DR platform and have complete confidence it'll be there when we need it. So we've done that multiple times now since we've made that migration.
Yeah, and to add to Shawn's point, the other thing is, from the business development side, working with Expedient has really enabled us to earn the business of customers that otherwise might not have been quite as available. So an example is, we had a practice that was running a different practice management system on premise, and that system, in addition to their Microsoft Exchange server, had been hit with a ransomware attack, and they basically had a paperweight of an infrastructure environment. And we were already in discussion with this practice to earn their business, but that really accelerated things, because we had the luxury of being able to balloon the environment without having to order physical hardware and worry about that lead time. Where if that were the case, we'd have to tell them, sorry, we can get you in and X date down the road. But thankfully, with a partnership such as we have with Expedient, we're able to, in a couple of flips of some switches, be able to get them in the environment and provision. And we actually brought that customer live from point of contract signing to fully live and seeing patients within less than 2 days. And I think that just speaks volumes to the kind of ROI that we've gotten from our partnership with Expedient.
That's fantastic. And I think that's something that comes up a lot, is that if your infrastructure is able to scale, if your infrastructure is able to meet the needs of your customers, you can respond to things that you couldn't respond to before. My background is in infrastructure, and every time someone asked for resources that I didn't have, I said, all right, cool, that'll be 2 months. And they would say, why? Well, I have to buy the hardware, I have to quote it, then I have to get the funding, then I have to go buy it, then it has to ship, then I have to rack it, then I have to configure it, then I have to make the resources available. And now you're just to the point of where you can get started. That's all me 2 months in advance, because like Shawn mentioned earlier, I didn't want to leave too much hardware, too many resources sitting on the shelf, not being used. So this ability to balloon gives even your business side that doesn't know what the technology is, probably doesn't even care about what the technology is, they just care that it works. That gives them the confidence that they can go out and talk to customers they couldn't talk to before. I think that's actually a really, really powerful thing. So I have a couple questions in here. I'm going to keep asking some questions here as well. So the first one here is, did Expedient help to ensure HIPAA and other compliances with your cloud data? I can go on our compliance spiel, but I think it's better if you guys tell the story first.
Sure. Shawn, do you want to take that one, or would you like me to? I figured you'd probably get into the SOC audits and the way that Expedient exceeds our expectations, but not to spoil it, I'll let you lead that.
Oh man, you're stealing all his thunder.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and every year I go out there and I'm checking Expedient's SOC audit, which they make fully available. They're fully SOC compliant, high trust compliant, fully certified. So I review it every year to make sure that they are adhering to those best practices, as we do as well on our side and at that, that OS level and that access level.
And actually, if I can throw a quick plug in here, we actually pulled the compliance page to its own segment. So it's not at the bottom of the security page anymore. It is its own page. So you can go on our website, expedient.com. You can click services, click compliance, and see all of those audits: HIPAA, high trust, SOC, PCI DSS, GDPR. You can see all of them super quick and available. So Shawn, I hope I made your life just a smidge easier.
Yes, you have.
That's also, there's a new security page as well. So if anybody wants to go see the new and improved security page that's out there as well, services, security, check all that out. Ben, did you want to add anything on that one before I go to the next question?
Sure. I guess the only other thing I'll add is we had the opportunity to do a physical walkthrough of an Expedient data center, and we were just frankly blown away with the level of sophistication and resiliency that data center has, even relative to, some big name data centers that we previously had our equipment in, from the generators to, it was just, every question that we asked, we tried to throw some curveballs to them about, well, what if this happens? None of those went unanswered with more than sufficient responses. So, being able to see that with our own very eyes was very powerful. And I know the leadership staff would definitely echo that sentiment.
Shout out to our whole facilities team. Y'all do a great job and don't get any of the shine. So I'm giving you some shine today. Thank you to our facilities team who do a fantastic job cooling, powering, and keeping the lights on in our data centers so that we can keep the lights on for our customers. The other thing I do want to throw out there, if you go on our website, click data centers, there's virtual tours. So if you can't make it to one of our data centers, or you're not necessarily close to any of them, you guys are in Cincinnati. Columbus is what, an hour and a half, 2 hour drive?
Yeah, about an hour and a half.
Not close, but also not something you're just going to pop in one day. You can go online and look at our virtual data center tours. So you can flip through and click through any of our data centers, whether that's Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Boston. You can click through any one of them and see how we do things. Another question here, does Expedient offer health assessment services? What does that process look like? Yes, you can go to our website, expedient.com/services/assessments. You can sign up for an assessment. You download a little tool. It takes a look at your environment. It helps you figure out what your inventory is, support status, those sorts of things to understand the health of your current environment. And we can even go deeper on that assessment to help you figure out what is going to be the right cloud for your workload. So there's another set of levels to that you can get into with us on the assessments. So Shawn, Ben, what can we do better? I like to ask this question from time to time, just like Shawn, Ben, you guys have said so many very nice things. Are there things that we can do better that you think that we should be working on?
The only thing I have to add is I don't have an Expedient coffee mug yet. If you could send some of those to your clients, it would be greatly appreciated.
Shawn, I don't have one. This is a mug of my family. No, we can get a coffee mug. Karen's on. Hi, Karen. Let's get Shawn and Ben some coffee mugs. Darn it. Listen, we gotta start the merch store. I think. Should we start a merch store? Is that what we're saying here?
Definitely.
I do want to thank Shawn and Ben for joining us this week. We do appreciate your time. Please, everyone, join us next week as we go through our new multi-cloud file and object services. This is actually something we've been working on for a good period of time now. I think I just saw Ben's face light up a little bit, like he wants to know more about that too. So Ben, you can go register on our website, expedient.com. It'll be right up there at the top of the page. You can go register for that webinar. But we're going to talk through our new multi-cloud file and object services. The winner this week, he did not win a coffee mug, but he did win that $100 Amazon gift card, is Paul Poliwata. So congratulations to Paul. And we will see all of you next week. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.